The gun is the weapon of choice in this country. In just 3 months, between April and June, nearly 3,000 were killed through the barrel of a gun. Now, those who respect the law, especially in Gauteng, also carry guns to protect themselves. But these are not real. They are toys or replica guns. What happens when the police catch you with a toy gun? Well, let's hear from Gideon Joubert from Gun Owners South Africa. A very good morning to you, Gideon, and thank you so much for your time. So, of course, people are carrying fake guns just to protect themselves, just to give off, that belief that stay away. How did we get here?
It's actually quite a tragic story, and I think if you look at the spiraling crime rate, violent crime rate specifically that we have, the previous quarter crime statistics, homicide was up by a staggering 22%, kidnapping was up by 100%, our trio crime category remains astronomically high, and I think we've had more than a decade of failing policing that has resulted in a national crime situation that really puts South Africa in the top 10, if not the top 5 most dangerous countries in the world. We have already some of the most dangerous cities in the world, and people are desperate for anything really that with which to protect themselves, or in this case really just an illusion of safety, because of government's almost extensive and criminal failure. And I think it's a desperate situation where citizens truly believe, and correctly believe, that they need to fend for themselves because the state has failed at upholding their constitutional mandate at securing the citizens of the Republic against violent crime.
Realistically, how effective is having a toy gun? So I have a toy gun and I'm trying to, as you said, give the illusion that I'm protecting myself and that I'm not to be messed with. How's that going to really help me against somebody who has a real gun?
It's not effective at all. And this is the major problem, is I think there's a misunderstanding from people how violent confrontational crime works. And what a toy gun really is it's a stage prop for posturing. And most violent criminals are not stupid. This is a career that they've chosen. They understand body language and intent, and they read it very accurately. And they know if someone's posturing. So my advice to people would be please don't do this. I understand that we have a highly inefficient system regarding getting legally armed, but I would highly recommend that they go and find a accredited competency training provider or proficiency training provider, get trained and go through the correct legal process to become legally armed and become proficient and trained in the use of firearms for self-defense, really. And if that's not an option, there are other options as well that they can explore.
What then happens to me? So then there I am with a BB gun or something that almost looks like a real gun but isn't. Or even if I do have a real gun, Gideon, I think maybe we haven't even unpacked this one. I do have a real gun. I just do not have ammunition because I'm obviously moving away from the possibility of my family hurting themselves with my having a loaded gun. What then happens if the police find me with this?
So if the police find you with a BB gun on your person, there is a lot of uncertainty how they would handle, for example, that situation. If you're carrying it in a holster concealed on your person, they may confront you and question you about it if they spot it. Some of them may in fact not be able, unfortunately due to a lack of their own training, differentiate between that and a real gun and actually arrest you if you cannot produce a license for a toy gun. More importantly is, if you point at someone with a toy gun under the Firearms Control Act of 2000 and the Criminal Procedures Act, that is treated as pointing at somebody with a real gun, which is a criminal offense unless you have a legitimate defensive reason in doing so. So with regards to the use between BB guns and real guns and toy guns in a so-called defensive context, it is legally, weirdly enough, treated exactly the same. But if you think about criminals robbing people with toy guns, in fact, criminals robbing people with homemade replicas that they make in a metal shop and weld pieces of metal together that they spray paint, it does kind of illustrate why that might be necessary, because you might not, as the victim, know the difference either. So again, that's why I really recommend against, please do not carry toy guns on your person for self-defense.
Gideon, I'll admit this. As a youngin, I did have a BB gun, but it was obviously you see it as a toy. but there is some conditioning there where I've watched action movies and I'm now idolizing my action heroes and I'm thinking, ooh, a gun looks cool, but it really isn't cool. I'm what, a 10, 11, 12-year-old who finds, you know, some kind of admiration in a weapon. It's a weapon even though it's not a real one. How are we essentially breeding as society children who are going to see violence as something that is normal, that owning a toy gun is essentially okay, and then eventually they might decide that, well, if it was okay for me to own a toy gun, why isn't it okay for me to own a real gun? Are we really just shooting ourselves, excuse the pun, in the foot?
I don't think so. And there's a good reason for that. I think the origins of violence in our society is more complex than just the issue of toy guns. And with regards to the existence of toy guns, obviously I move in a circle of most people owning firearms, and toy guns are an incredibly important tool for parents to teach their children responsible gun handling from a sort of young age, especially if there's a firearm in the home. It becomes an educational tool, as in you do not point your toy guns at other people. You use your toy guns for a very specific purpose, only where the parents say it's safe to do so. It becomes a training wheel almost, in the sense of if this child at some point in its childhood or adolescence encourages a firearm out there in the world, it at least can understand what it is, that it's not to be handled, and then to step away, as opposed to a child just being completely clueless. So there are pros and cons to this. I'm very much pro parents using toy guns as a tool to teach their kids how to be responsible with this, because that's actually what a gun is. It's not a toy, it's a tool. And like all sorts of tools, whether they're power tools or handheld tools, they can hurt you, cause damage, or harm other people if you abuse or misuse them. And there are numerous training initiatives and awareness initiatives. And I know that South African Gun Owners Association is looking also at doing initiatives with schools to just sort of teach gun safety, not handling, nothing that would be overly controversial, but definitely teach these kids, especially in the areas where kids are more likely to encourage guns, how to be safe around them if they do encounter them.
You raise an important point. Education around guns, the use of, and what exactly they are. Is that the problem we face in our country, that there is a lot of lack of education around guns, and that we are owning them, buying them, using them out of fear because of what is happening in this country, more than we are doing for the tools that they are for? I mean, you know, guns do also get used for sport, and yet a lot of the people that own them in this country are doing so either for crime or to defend themselves against it.
I believe that there is a significant lack of education on this topic, and I have, in my personal capacity, tried to make a little bit of a change on that, and I know a great number of other people are equally doing so, which is why I think conversations like this one this morning is very, very important. I think we also need to recognize, and I'm quoting from Mark Shaw's book, the one Give Us More Guns, which I recommend every single person read to fully understand the problem we have, where the state is the largest source of unlicensed firearms to criminals, either through directly selling them out of state stores. And just as an aside, the losses out of the SAP 13 evidence lockers, those firearms, that's not even reported on or accounted for. So we have no idea how many guns corrupt cops are selling out there. And equally, the stuff that criminals are licensing through fraud, because they've captured key elements of the system. Once we confront the fact that guns are not going to go away, no matter what laws we write, but we rather confront it proactively and saying, let us educate children, let's educate our fellow South Africans and give them a understanding about what these tools are, we may actually start making a big difference in how people approach this issue, not just theoretically, but in practice.
Just before I let you go, Gideon, guns are not going away, so we need to essentially just find a way around it, and education will go a long way towards it. But then we do need to get those that should not be in the wrong hands off the streets. How do we do that?
So that's already a function of the police, and they are doing that. Our major problem is that guns are confiscated from criminals that end up in SAP 13 evidence lockers, which are not audited, and are sold right back onto the streets by corrupt police officers. I believe the Chris Prince saga was just a tip of the iceberg, and that's one man who alone sold 9,000 guns to gangsters. So what we need to address that problem is we need transparency in this. We need proper civilian oversight of it. And there needs to be, as an urgent matter, and I'm saying on an urgent basis, this is an issue that should have been addressed 14 years ago already. But corruption within the SAPS is one of the largest threats to public safety and security, I think, that we have in South Africa. And unless that issue is hardcore confronted and dealt with, we're going to go round and round in circles with this issue until the cows come home. And that is something that deeply worries me.
Yeah, it worries me. It worries, I think, a number of millions of South Africans. But Gideon, we'll leave it there with you. Thank you so much for joining us.